So welcome everyone to Webinars Worth Watching in 2025. We're going to do a quick introduction before the presenters get going. So hello, my name is Sam Harlow. I'm the online learning librarian at UNCG. My pronouns are she, hers, and here's my email address if you want to hear from me. Greg Bell, who's the dean of the graduate school, could not be here, but I did want to give him a slide because we came up with the idea of this presentation together. So we actually came up with the idea of webinars worth watching in 2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic moved everything online for a couple of years. And I would say even without the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to see that presenting online was more important than ever before for graduate students in particular, based on, having to present online, maybe your thesis, maybe talking to colleagues all over the globe about your research. So we came up with this idea that was modeled after 3-minute thesis to give people 10 minutes and 10 slides to present on their topic. So here are the rules of the competition. Our presenters, our graduate student presenters know these rules, maybe not by heart, but they know them well. So this is just for people who come in just to let you know what we're doing. So it's a slide presentation. It can be in Canva, PowerPoint, or Google Slides, but it has to be a slide format, right? So not like making a video of this or anything. It's a slide presentation with no more than 10 slides, and that includes your title slide and credits. All the slides have to be within the 10 range. The webinars are limited to 10 minutes maximum, and if you exceed the 10 minutes, you are disqualified. So I will have a timer next to me here on my phone where I will be timing you, and right at 10 minutes, I will say stop. If you keep going, then that you are disqualified. So please don't do that, presenters. So I will give a 2-minute warning and a 1-minute warning in the chat. So if you want to have that up on your phone, or if you have dual monitor to kind of see the warnings, you're welcome to also have a timer on your own end as well. So webinars are spoken word, which just means like you can't sing your whole webinar or anything like that. And the minute the presenter starts speaking is when I will start the timer, and then it will be pretty clear when it's done. The decision of the judges is final. We use a rubric, which I'm happy to put in the chat, but the final judges have the rubric on their end. They will be scoring them, and they will leave some brief comments in case our presenters want to hear the final feedback afterwards, but that's optional. And they will be scoring that, and I will present the winner in this live session. We also have a people's choice, so please stay till the end where I will put that on while the judges are kind of finalizing, so we can kind of do that all at one time, so we'll know who the first, second, and people's choice. Of course, the first place person could also be the people's choice. The second place candidate could also be the people's choice. You, of course, cannot be first and second at the same time. So we could have someone win 2 things is the point of this. So I just want to give a thanks to the preliminary judges, Audrey Brickley, who is the UNCG Nursing Academic Technology Specialist, and Rachel Olson, UNCG Libraries Communication and Outreach Librarian. So this is a different set of judges for the finals, but using the same rubric, but it could be different, right? Jenny Dale, UNCG Libraries Head of Research, Outreach, and Instruction, and Hewan Gurma, Associate Professor of African American and African Diaspora Studies, AADS, and the Graduate School Faculty Fellow. So, with all of that out of the way, I think we're ready to begin. So, we are going to do this in alphabetical order. I have a slide for each contestant. So, each contestant will stop sharing after, and then I will put the slide up to the next person, and we'll let the judges, finish up their scoring before the next person starts. So, we'll make sure they're good to go before that gets going. Okay. So, first up, Aurelio Cabo Jr., Rapid Evaluation of Antimicrobial Properties. Oh, I don't know if I can pronounce that. UTGel, a new generation sustainable soft nanomaterial. So let me stop sharing. And I noticed there was something going on in the chat, so let me make sure this person isn't Anne's note taker.
Can you see my screen and slide?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me get rid. I was just getting rid of the AI bot. If someone added that person, I don't think they did, but there is a transcript of this since it's being recorded, where you can get closed captioning from that, and you'll get a closed captioning after it. I think those bots just enter meetings sometimes, so they were kicked out. Okay, yeah, you can share your screen again. Sorry, I was just making sure that was all good to go. Let me pull up
You
my timer.
can see it now.
Yes. It's not in full screen. It's like I can see the slides on the left. Yep, now it is. Okay, let me pull up the timer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Wait.
Okay, I have the timer up. Um, and I'm
Good
gonna
afternoon,
mute.
everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aurelio Cava Jr., and today I'll be presenting my webinar entitled Rapid Evaluation of Antimicrobial Properties of Eutectazole, a next-generation sustainable soft nanomaterial. Let's start with a little bit of history, wherein during the pre-20th century, the minor infection cannot be cured until 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. And after that, there is a golden era for the medicine. And today, since 2015, the World Health Organization actually launches the first Antibiotic Awareness Week. However, moving forward toward the revolutionizing the medicine, there's always a setback. The setback is the antimicrobial resistance, because experts say that by 2050, it could be a bigger killer than cancer, with 10 million deaths predicted. In fact, in the USA alone, more than 2.8 million antimicrobial resistant infections occur each year, that more than 35,000 people die as a result, as per Center for Disease Control report 2019. However, the bigger picture here and the biggest question is, how does antimicrobial resistance arise? Well, let's take, for example, the antibiotic resistance here. When the antibiotic first developed, it can kill bacteria and core infections. However, over time, bacteria evolved ways to defend themselves against this antibiotic, and infection persists, meaning they are now called antibiotic resistance because antimicrobial resistance evolved naturally. And also, physicians can sometimes prescribe antibiotics unnecessarily. So let's always remember, antibiotics cannot kill viruses and fungi. It only applies for bacteria. So if you have an infection, the first question you need to assess is what causes the infection. If that's bacteria, it should be antibiotic treatment. If virus, antiviral. Fungi, antifungal. Parasite, antiparasitic treatment. But the question here is that, aside from antimicrobial drugs, are there new and promising sustainable materials that can help fight antimicrobial resistance? And what are the rapid tests to use to evaluate the antimicrobial properties? The answer, yes. We're happy to share that we developed a soft nanomaterial in a combination of deep eutectic solvent and hydrogel, meaning we use a material of choline chloride, which provides health benefits usually found in eggs, chicken, and dairy products, imidazole, found in tea leaves and coffee beans that can stimulate the central nervous system, tannic acid that found from plants and fruits, that cacao beans have the highest amount. When we combine the choline chloride and imidazole at a certain temperature, it develops a liquid solution called deep eutectic solvent. And when we add the tannic acid, it's also formed a deep eutectic solvent. And in order for us to test the antimicrobial property, we use an scaffold called hydrogel that comes from bacterial nanocellulose. This was produced by bacteria that is harmless and non-pathogen, meaning these bacteria were just feeding them sugar. Then they're now producing cellulose. This cellulose is pure and non-contaminated, unlike with the plant-based cellulose that we need to use harmful chemicals like sulfuric acid. So when we combine the deep eutectic solvent and hydrogen, what is that called? Correct, eutectazole. Eutectazole here we produce two. One, it has no tannic acid, and the other one, it has a tannic acid. Moving forward, for us to evaluate the antimicrobial property, first, the deep eutectic solvent need to be tested how much or what is the lowest amount of antimicrobial agent that can stop the microorganism from growing. That is called minimum inhibitory concentration test, or MIC test. So we use here 96 well plate. This is the vessel. Then we combine the deep eutectic solvent to the microorganism. Then we let them grow for 24 hours. Then after 24 hours, we use a plate reader. We insert this vessel inside the plate reader. And for just under a minute, that rapid and fast, we have the result. Then after that, we combine the deep eutectic solvent into eutectic gel. Now the next test will be this diffusion test. This diffusion test is actually to check materials and possible drugs for their ability to kill microorganisms. So here, as you can see here in the circle, at the center, the pink one is the material. And the zone of inhibition, the white part, is where there's no growth of microorganism. And in order for us to assess this, we're only using a simple ruler. Then we're testing or checking the diameter. If the diameter is equal or less than to 14 millimeter, it is resistant or microorganism can survive. If that's around 15 to 16 millimeter, that's intermediate, meaning we need to add more of our material. But if the diameter is around equal to 17 or more than 17, it is susceptible, meaning microorganisms easily be killed. And we're happy to share, based on our research result, by using E. coli and Cerevisiae as our microorganisms, that wherein the E. coli is the bacteria that can cause serious disease like food poisoning, urinary tract infection, pneumonia, and blood infection. That's why we need to clean our food or boil it at least. So we found here that our deep eutectic solvent can kill this bacteria around 99%. And when we added the tannic acid, it's around 95%. It's still impressive. And the concentration for the 99% is only 45.5 microgram per ml. And for 95% is 5.68 microgram per ml. And the eutectic gel, with or without tannic acid, they are both susceptible. For the Cerevisiae, for fungi, this fungi actually can act as an opportunistic pathogen in people with weakened immune system. For example, infection in the blood, pneumonia, and urinary tract infection. And our deep eutectic solvent can kill this fungi around 97%. When we added the tannic acid, it's around 83%. Although it's lower, it still is impressive because it's more than 80%. And the concentration is only 22.7 microgram per ml for 97% and 5.68 microgram per ml for 82%. And the eutectic gel we produce with or without tannic acid, they're both susceptible. In conclusion, we believe that we need to be aware that antimicrobial resistance is a growing problem requiring new solutions. So our eutectic gel, a soft nanomaterial made from eco-friendly deep eutectic solvent and bacterial nanocellulose hydrogel, it has antimicrobial properties because when we test it, it effectively stops the growth of the E. coli and S. cerevisiae. And the rapid antimicrobial test showed strong effectiveness, labeling the material as susceptible, meaning it can kill microbes. In the future, we believe that the eutectic gel is a promising, sustainable alternative to antibiotics and antifungal, potentially helping to combat infections in the future. We need to always remember, in the US, someone dies every 15 minutes from an antimicrobial resistant infection, meaning that's almost 100 people a day. And we need to do something to stop it. Thank you.
Okay, so if you want to stop sharing your screen. Yeah, you muted. Okay, great. Thank you. Great start. So our judges are going to be doing their thing right now. If the judges could just let me know in chat or by unmuting and saying done, that is how I will know to continue. And then we'll get on to the next contestant's slide. Okay, I heard you. Thank you.
I'm done too.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so next up is Fiora McKell from the Library and Information Science Department talking about finding hope, Southern resilience in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. So when you're ready, share your screen to your presentation. I see it. It is in full screen mode. Can I make sure I hear you okay before we start?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Cool.
Okay. I'm going to mute and turn my camera off. Take your time, and when you start speaking, I will start the timer. Thank you.
Welcome to Webinars Worth Watching. The title of my presentation is Finding Hope, Southern Resilience in the Aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And my name is Fiora McHale. Thank you for allowing me to share this research and this story today. When Hurricane Helene touched Western North Carolina in September of 2024, I was in the first semester of my Master's of Library Science degree. I had to do an action research project, and so I began with the research question of how were the residents of Western North Carolina impacted by Hurricane Helene? What began as a somewhat simple question, although a big goal, an ambitious goal, in the beginning, I didn't know how I was going to answer this, but with time and evolving through the research process, it turned into an independent oral history collection. I was fortunate to have access to materials such as a camera and recording equipment, so I set out to start interviewing people and collecting their stories. Part of what made Hurricane Helene such a perfect disaster was the antecedent rain that fell for 2 days before the storm. It softened the ground, it got the trees ready to fall, and it set the way for landslides to follow. Early Friday morning, Tropical Storm Helene touched western North Carolina, where over the course of 2 days, 12 to 20 inches of rain dropped in the area. In the following days, mudslides continued to sweep between Tennessee and North Carolina. All of these mudslides have still not yet been fully documented, and that process continues today, months later. The average winds were 40 to 60 miles per hour with wind gusts over 75 miles per hour. Those wind gusts were what was responsible for trees snapping like toothpicks, and had the average mile per hour just been a little bit higher at that 75 mile per hour mark, that would have made Hurricane Helene a Category 1 hurricane in North Carolina. In the original pilot stages of this research, I was able to conduct 4 audio interviews. Later I conducted more, but in the beginning it was just 4. Of those 4 participants at the time of the research in November, I found that they went on average 3 days without cell service, 5 days without a hot meal, 7 days without a hot shower, 15 days without power in their homes, and 16 days without water in their homes. Even once water returned, it was not clean for a long time, and most of the area was still under a boil water alert, as was the case when I was still conducting this initial stage of the research. None of the participants had clean water, and none of them had internet access yet. So the methodology of this research began with the concept that everyone had a story to tell about what had happened. I knew that no matter where I went, I would be able to find participants, and that was the case. Following this was the need for consent and safety. So I did research while I was working on my IRB information certification in class to properly understand what I needed to do to ensure the safety of working with human subjects. I designed a consent form from this knowledge, and I did some trauma-informed research to ensure that anyone I spoke to would feel comfortable and understand what they were agreeing to in the research. With this, I began conducting oral history interviews, and not really sure where that was going to go, but knowing that this collection, this documentation needed to be done. One question that I asked each participant was if they lost anything. One of those participants laughed and said she lost hope the first time I asked this question, but later she wanted to revisit that statement. She explained that in the time that people were recovering from the hurricane, especially in October, she witnessed her community that she grew up in come together in a way she had never seen before. She saw people taking care of each other, people reaching out that she hadn't heard from in years. This was a sentiment that I heard across every single person I spoke to, and not just this one participant. She said in all of that destruction, it actually gave her more hope, and she felt a greater connection to her community and her world because of what they had survived together. At the end of the pilot stage of the research, I recommended action that this work needed to continue. So I began reaching out to librarians across North Carolina and got in contact with Pack Memorial Library's Special Collection Department in Asheville, North Carolina, which was working on putting together a community memory project they would later call Come Hell or High Water. In January, this project officially launched with the intention of collecting the shared history that our community had gone through. By looking to accept photographs, personal histories, documents, and later start an oral history collection outreach, this project seeks to document what everyone experienced and to also make it available for us to learn from it. It's not the first time Western North Carolina is flooded, but we can treat it differently this time and honor what people went through and maybe be a bit more prepared next time. So the right-hand side is an image of a map. This indicates where submissions are coming from. There's a little geo marker for everything that's submitted. This will later be referenced to see if any areas are missing. To the left is an example of some of the questions that are asked when someone goes to submit an oral history through the Omeka website, which is a website that's been grant funded to host large files of audio recordings and photographs so that this project can be available for the public for many years to come. What started out as a librarian's need to archive and document what had happened instead became a way for me to speak to how Southern resilience became a shared history of my community. The Omeka site that Special Collections at PAC is able to host will eventually have 32 oral histories hosted on that site, if not more, if more funding comes in. And I have already been able to conduct 7 of my own oral history interviews. The reason that this oral history collection is so important and the impact of it is it's giving people the opportunity to share their stories, and for many people in a way they've never been able to. In 1977, a book titled Our Appalachia, an oral history, was published, which focused on the stories of Appalachian culture and the people within these mountains. It discussed the struggles and the joys, the highs and the lows, and the strengths and the weaknesses of what people go through in this area. And I think this history can do something similar. It's going to highlight what the people went through during the hurricane, but not just that, it's going to highlight what we did after and how we came together, and we fixed an area that was so horribly destroyed. And a lot of community and relationship and family has come out of that experience. So I thank you for your time today. All the pictures in this presentation were taken by me, and I'm very grateful to have been able to share this with you all.
Great job. More applause. Okay, so same deal as last time. We're going to give the judges a couple minutes to get going. I'm going to share my screen again. Heard
I'm done,
you.
Sam.
Okay, great. So next up, we have Lucas Tucker from History and WGSS talking about Storyville, New Orleans, sex, race, and criminalization in America.
Hello. All right, let me share my screen real quick.
Hear you great. Let me reset my timer.
All right.
Hold on.
I'm...
Hold on. It's loading. Okay.
Oh,
It
okay.
went. Okay. So I'm going to mute and turn my camera off and just take a breath and then I'll time. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Hello, my name is Lucas Tucker. Thank you for that introduction. Today I will be talking about Storyville, New Orleans. Storyville was the only red light district in the United States at the turn of the 20th century, and it has a lot to teach us about how we understand sex, race, and crime in the United States. So to set up the basics, my research question going into this was how can we use what we know about Storyville to build a better world? So I hope to engage all of my audience in what I call feminist world building. I am a WGSS postbac student, so Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. In a lot of our classes, we talk about sex work, but we don't often really dive deep into the history and the criminalization of sex work. And that is because it's a very contentious topic. Our understandings of sex work can teach us about our understandings of sex, our understandings of race, and our understandings of capital. So I want to engage all of you in feminist world building, which is the concept that we together can build a better world through sharing ideas and through imagining what we can build together. Okay, so what was Storyville? Just a few blocks from the Mississippi River, Storyville was the red light district of New Orleans from 1897 to its closure in 1917. So boatmen would come off of the Mississippi River, which is seen at the bottom of this map here, and they would look for food, entertainment, and often brothels. This was a major problem, a blight on the city of New Orleans, and so they sequestered Storyville into the 63rd block. You can see it in red there on Basin Street. It was named after its creator, City Councilman Sidney Story. As kind of a joke, he didn't like that. Storyville was an experiment following in the footsteps of German and Dutch red light districts of the time. So he did the research and he decided that this would be the best way to police sex work was to keep it legalized, but only in one part of the city. Storyville has an extremely contested history. Much of the history was destroyed after its closure. But one of its most contentious claims is that it was the midwife of jazz, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. So who made up Storyville? Who was Storyville? Storyville had a very large cast of characters. There were madams and professors and axemen and crib workers. It's really, truly a good story, I would say. One of the most famous people to come out of Storyville was Miss Lulu White, who is not pictured here. This is actually one of her workers who she had posed for her. Lulu White was a mixed-race older woman, and she clearly didn't want to be seen as an older woman, which is why she had somebody pose as her. She was the madam and proprietor of one of the most profitable houses in Storyville called the Mahogany Hall, where she employed primarily lighter-skinned women, and she advertised these women primarily to white men. This was also very frustrating to the city of New Orleans, who at the time had a lot of anti-miscegenation laws, so that meant that they were against mixed-race sex. Storyville was segregated at the time. Plessy v. Ferguson had been decided only a year prior to the creation of Storyville, and the desire to separate races was tied in with the desire to quote-unquote clean up the city from vice, so things like drugs, gambling, and prostitution. So here's one of the advertisements that Lulu White used. It was called The Blue Book. A lot of proprietors use the same book. You can see this is one of her advertisements. At the last sentence it says, if you would like to know Lulu Morris, you can call it Miss White's and be introduced to Miss Morris. So this was one of her girls. And Lulu, Miss White, of course, refers to Lulu White. So what about women who didn't fit into that picture? So crib work was also pretty common in Storyville. Rented by the night, these cribs of Storyville were small portioned houses that would be self-run by one or two sex workers per crib. these cribs often housed sex workers who existed outside of the types of workers desired by brothels and mansions. So these women, this is a mug shot of one of the crib workers here, um, both lived and worked in these cribs. They were described as pretty filthy, pretty unkempt, and that was partially because these women constantly had to be working. Cribs were very expensive to live in. They were rented per night. So women had to constantly be working. Most frequently, this meant that black women who did not have lighter skins would live in these types of cribs. All right. So back to the jazz midwifery point, because it is one of the most interesting things to come out of Storyville other than our policing of sex work. So considered to be the midwife of jazz instead of the birthplace of jazz, Storyville clubs, saloons, brothels, and cribs often featured a rotating cast of pianists and other musicians called professors. So you can see an advertisement here for Professor Tony Jackson. Famous musicians such as Jelly Roll Morton and even Louis Armstrong were able to develop much of their music right there in Storyville. Storyville largely employed black musicians, as Jim Crow segregation laws prevented them from working elsewhere. So as one of the professors is quoted saying, "It's just where the money was." And it was a really good place to develop jazz. It was seen as unkempt music full of vice, things that would be tied to drugs and gambling, and are still to this day, jazz is a more sexual music form, music genre, and that's partially because a lot of it came from Storyville. All right, so let's get into our world building. What can we learn from Storyville? Storyville was not created to protect sex workers, but to contain them to protect the purity of white men and women. Even with the creation of Storyville, sex work still occurred throughout New Orleans and went relatively unpunished, but certainly not unnoticed. So even though there was this legalized district, there was still sex work all over the city of New Orleans, and often sex workers had to bribe police officers in order to continue getting away with their work. After the forced shutdown of Storyville, many sex workers continued to engage in their work. So, what I would like to ask of you all is, can we imagine what a world would look like if we protected sex workers rather than punished them? So, what would it look like if, rather than, say, in North Carolina, where we have new ID laws making websites like Pornhub ask for your ID every time you log into their website, what if we instead created legislation that uplifted and supported our sex workers? Because, as we all know, not talking about it or policing it doesn't make things like sex, drugs, and gambling go away. So I hope that this has inspired some of you to talk about sex work, talk to the sex workers in your life, and think about how you engage in sex work or engage with sex work, and what we can do to make sex work safer for all of those who are engaged in it. Here are my citations and sources. If you are interested in learning more about Storyville, you can watch the TV show Interview with the Vampire. I recently learned that this was a site in that show, but you can also visit the Storyville Museum in New Orleans. And I will point you towards Al Rose's Storyville, New Orleans. It's my last citation here. Later authors have come to the conclusion that much of his writing was made up, which I think is very interesting, but it is one of the first accounts of Storyville. All right. And with that said, thank you all so much for your attendance and for listening. I appreciate all of you who have shown up to support me, including my mom. Thanks, Mom. Please let me know if you have any questions, but I guess not because it's a webinar. Anyways, thank you.
Great job. Yes, someone raised their hand, and yeah, this is a presentation format. Sorry. Presenters are welcome to put their email in the chat, and while the judges are tallying, if anyone has any questions, since we do have some extra time for all the presenters, now you could put it into chat. Please don't leave yet, because also we have People's Choice, which will get set up as the judges are finalizing their scores. Judges, please email me your scores as you do it. And again, presenters, feel free to put their contact information in the chat if you want. It's not required. So that being said, let me pull up the link for our People's Choice. people's choice today is going to be in Mincemeter. Let me make sure this is working. And so the way it's going to work is I'm going to put this link in chat in a second. You're going to get a screen with the 3 contestants on the right of that screen. You will choose one and then push submit. If you try to refresh or do it again, it should give you a screen that says you already submitted, but I can tell there are 24 people in this space, so if we're getting like way more than 24 people, if you find a workaround of this, I will wipe it and we'll try again. I will present it, you'll see after the fact, like not presented yet on your left when you see the contestants on your right. I will present it at the end to show you who won People's Choice. That is how we are going to try this time. I've tried forms in the past, but the only way to ensure one person does the form is that it does if one person does the form, then you have to like log into an email address, and I thought that was too complicated. So we're trying this year. Let me know if there are any issues, but I'm seeing the votes come in, so keep voting. Get up, everyone. Contestants, you can vote. You get 1 vote. So feel free to vote for yourself. Okay. So if you don't have access for the chat for whatever, that's the same link. It should work. You should just be able to put go.uncg.edu/www people in any browser, in your phone, whatever. And again, vote once, please. Honor system. We're doing our best. Okay. I'm about to present the People's Choice Award, and then I will tell you who won first and second. Also, second first, and then that. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Congratulations, Fiora, you won People's Choice. It was close. It was close, but you are the winner of that. So congratulations, yay! Okay, so now on to first and second. I will announce second first. So who is in second place is Morelio Cabo, from Nanoscience. So congratulations, second place. And for the first time in a long time, we have 3 different winners. This ruined it, but Lucas Tucker from WGS and History is our first place winner.
Thank you so much. That's so exciting.
So there's cash prizes for everything. So congrats, everyone. Everyone gets some money today. So $300 to first place. Murillo, you get $200. And Fiora, you get $100 for People's Choice. These will be posted into your student accounts, and I will be in touch in the next couple of weeks about how that works. We'll get you in touch with the graduate school and the library, people who have control over money, which I do not, and we'll get that all settled up. So congratulations. This was really good, really close scores, I will say. They were all great. I really appreciate this year that y'all all did 3 different things in 3 different areas. We had STEM and humanities represented, and social science, there that too. So great. So thank you all for coming. I love this presentation. I love this competition. It's one of my favorite things I do in my job. I don't really even feel like it's a job. That's how much I love it. And I don't say that much in capitalism. So great. So thank you all again. Happy Friday. Hopefully we can get outside this weekend. Great job. Have a great weekend, everyone. Please let me know if you have any questions. I can send you feedback after the fact, but you don't have to, right? It's the final decision. But thanks, everyone.
Oh,
have a good day.
I can't use the chat, but I'm fine with social media stuff. I saw a question.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much. That's fine with me also.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
This is
so
such
they
a great
almost
opportunity.
said it's fine. I didn't use that. Yeah, great. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.